Welcome to Sports Doc Talk. I'm Will Sanchez, along with our orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine specialist, Dr. Grant Garcia. You see how that just kind of flows out of my mouth at this point? We've
Dude,
been
you're getting better each time.
You are our specialist and top doctor, but enough with the accolades because you don't need any more hyped up. We've got a great show. We have a topic that it's really concerning, really interesting. So I'm really looking forward to discussing it. But before we do all of that, we're talking about injuries. That means that we need to talk about the recovery shop. Let's give a shout out to Mike B and tell everybody why you love the recovery shop.
Well, big thanks to our sponsors. They've been our sponsors for a long time now. Man, it's been at least a year or more.
Mike
No,
B.
yeah, I appreciate it. So anyhow, the idea is if you're a surgeon, you're taking care of the injuries we're going to talk about today, right? These patients get a lot of swelling afterwards. They ask for what else can I do, right? It's not just the standard medicines you can give them. There's other options for them, supplements, nice machines, more advanced recovery systems. And so we have those there at the recovery shop. And as a surgeon, you can have your own specified section, which is really pretty cool because, patients can use it for non-surgical injuries, surgical injuries, whatever they want. It all kind of comes in one package. And the nice thing, it's vetted by the surgeons. You can vet your own products with them on things that are, DME approved, et cetera. So it's pretty awesome. So reach out to Mike B. I've been super happy with it. I have patients all the time calling me, even non-patients asking, hey, can I get something your patient got? I'm like, yeah, no problem. Happy to help. So
The reason we wanted to do the show was because of this injury. And I was watching the match live, and we're talking about Grigor Dimitrov's Wimbledon exit as he was up 2 games or 2-0 on the number one player of the world, Yannick Sinner, which eventually won Wimbledon. And he was cruising along, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, man, he's going to beat this. I think they were tied 2-2 in the third set and playing so well. It was absolutely incredible. And then you see a serve, and he kind of grabs his pec a little bit. And then when he goes to serve again, which was an ace, he collapses to the floor. First off, did you see the injury live, or did you just go back to the video? As we just decided to discuss exactly what had happened. What's your take on this?
So I didn't see it live,
Yeah,
probably working. Who knows what I was doing? But nonetheless, and the minute that next day in the operating room, my tech was coming up to me, and my PA was like, "Hey, man, did you see what happened? It was crazy. It's really unusual for tennis." And again, we hear about it in some of the football players, right? But to see it, you know, happen on real time in a tennis player is very unusual.
Yeah,
So,
there's a picture there.
yeah.
If you're watching on YouTube, he is reaching for that right pec. And when I first saw it, I thought it was just some kind of like, maybe a muscle injury, a pull. They're swinging so hard, right? You look at 135 miles an hour, 118. Return serves at 87 miles per hour. Every swing, forehand, backhand, just it's at the highest level, right? We're talking about the best athletes in the world. Why don't we talk a little bit about what this injury is and how it will affect Grigor going forward?
Yeah. So why don't you pull up the slide? You want to pull up that slide? That one, perfect. Yeah, pull that slide up. So he had a pec tendon tear, and I know we put down word partials because they're not always fully torn off, but you have a lot of issues with the lower part of the pec. You can see right there. So the pec has two heads. There's a clavicular head and the sternal head. And sometimes you can get a partial tear, and a lot of times the challenge here is sometimes it's hard to see exactly what type of tear they had, but a lot of times it's from getting caught on a tree. I've had caught on a tree. You've had wrestlers. You have bodybuilders, you have football players, a lot less common in throwing sports and tennis. So this is actually one of the first professional athletes I've seen with a pec tear that was a tennis player. So it's quite
Mm.
unusual. But that massive force cocking back, and basically what that tendon does is it gives you that nice contour. We all know about, pecs and the
Yeah.
pec flex. But it usually pops off of where the humerus is. So there's a little tendon. The misnomer, though, is that it's a pec tendon tear because usually the tendon is so thin and the tendon's so short that you pretty much never have tendon left on it. It's very unusual. It's usually something we call a myotendinous junction tear, where it tears where the muscle and the tendon connect together, What's interesting though is you guys see on the picture there on the top right, that's the muscle, but underneath that is something called a fascia. So you've probably seen like when you're cutting meat, you have got that thin white stuff in between that's kind of hard and tough
Yep.
when you're cutting the steak. That's exactly what that is. So that fascia, if that gets ripped off, it's a lot harder to fix. But that's the ones we want to have get the fascia on there plus the tendon and that pec. But it's such a big muscle, it balls up and you can really see a lot of deformity. So he was clutching the area that he tore it on. The problem is sometimes it depends on what type of tear you have. Now, his was something, he had surgery, likely successful. Obviously, the tear that was repairable. Sometimes, though, you can tear it in the middle of the muscle, and those are not fixable. But it's a different look. So it's a little bit tricky because these are kind of hard to see on MRI. Like, no matter how much people say they look at these MRIs, they know exactly what they're looking at. These MRIs are a little challenging to read compared to my, rotator cuff tears, shoulder dislocations,
Mhm.
ACLs, you name it. They can be more challenging. And obviously, this is a time dependent thing, which we can get into in a second.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I want to go back to what you said. You said if it's in the middle, it's unrepairable. Why? Can you explain that? Because that
Yeah.
was
So,
something key that you mentioned there.
yeah. So it can attach to the humerus, which is around the biceps area. And
Yep.
that's where there's tendon attached. It attaches to the chest wall on the inside, right? That's when people with their pecs, you can see it flexes all the way to the middle of their sternum. And so if it tears off there, the good news about those is they usually heal a lot faster and they usually get the contour back. The problem is if they tear the other one, that's where the power comes from of this muscle because the muscle is so big like this, and then
Yep.
it weaves down into some tiny little bit of a tendon and the muscle attachment. So that's usually the weaker point. And that's the way it happens is usually the last 4 to 5 inches of the bench press. That's almost always where it happens, or an abrupt check, or from what he had is that tennis serve. But these linemen that have gotten, we can talk about JJ Watt shortly, but they get caught and then it pulls back and it pops the tendon. The challenging part here is that, if you don't do a lot of these, I've been in surgeries before when even in training with some good guys that it was challenging to fix sometimes because it gets really distorted in there. It's not the same as like a biceps tendon where it pulls off. You can see the muscle. The muscle is like a three-dimensional. It's like a circle, and it folds on itself. So you have to understand the anatomy a little more when you fix these. Plus, it's such a powerful muscle, and the time is dependent, right? Like we can fix bicep tendon tears up in 3 months, but you get past 6 weeks, 5 weeks, you have to reconstruct this, which is a big problem, right? Like it's not, they just don't do as well if you have to reconstruct it. They have good results, but it's just not the same as if we have a fresh pec tendon repair back to the bone, right? Anything's always better when it's your own natural anatomy.
Yeah, if you're watching, I put some of the examples between the surgical repair and the non-operative for partial tears or low demand
Yeah,
patients. If you could just explain both options when it becomes a non-operative and how you make that decision
yeah,
compared to the surgical repair, which may seem obvious, but still, I would like for your input on that.
yeah. So the word partial tear is kind of a misnomer, right? Like a partial tear here, he didn't tear off both heads. So usually you still have the sternal head. So he
Yeah,
pulls off the sternal head and then he keeps the clavicular head. And then the thing is that basically that's a partial tear, but all the contour and muscle strength is gone. Does that make sense?
yeah,
So
yeah.
that still needs to be fixed. Now, someone really low demand, like, maybe 80s, maybe 70s, they don't really need to do a lot. Yeah, it's a big surgery because you're pulling that whole muscle back. You got to make a big incision in the shoulder and pull it back. You wouldn't do it for. But even up to 60s, I've had weightlifters, bodybuilders in their 60s that I've done it on, and they've done quite well. It kind of depends on the patient. It's exactly the same thing. It's a custom approach. But let's say you have that, it pulls off, then you want to fix it. Usually we try to do it in the first 6 weeks, but I'll be honest with you. I have a guy who's actually, thankfully, he's doing well. He was like 7 8 weeks out. I thought it was going to be super straightforward. I went into the pec tendon. I tried to pull it back, and the tendon was about 4 centimeters too short. So look at this. That's a lot, right? You got
Yeah.
to fill that with something, or you leave him, right? But this is a guy that he's 40 years old, and he can't pull his arm in like this. Total contour loss.
Oh.
So I remade it with a cadaver tendon, and that's a pretty
So is that
effective method.
cadaver and sutures and things like that? Or just trying to, at that point, you're connecting?
Yeah, well, we'll see that the audience will see shortly. In about 6 weeks, we're going to post the technique on how I did it. But the idea is that you basically take this Achilles tendon. The Achilles is from the lower part of your ankle. You fan it out, and then you weave it into the muscle, which is pretty sick. And then you all sew it in. There's a little bit of techniques, but on this one, you're going to love it because I added an internal brace. which has not
Oh,
been out published yet. So that is a pretty cool I knew it. So the cool part about this is it's amazing. He came back at 8 weeks and he looked like JJ Watt. Not the same size, but the
yeah,
same
yeah,
outcome. I mean, literally killing it. So I wonder if that had some level to do with it. But the idea is that basically now we're using these, as long as we can fix the brace from one side to the other side, we're adding these fiber tapes, internal braces to patients. So I'm finding any ways I can do it. So, they got the graft, they have the graft tendon interface, and now they also, into the bone, have this internal brace.
You brought up JJ Watt, and I remember when he tore his pec, and over here it says that it's supposed to be out 4 to 6 months, but he was back in 10 weeks. And for the football fans, they remember he wore that big, bulky black restraint on his arm that went all the way down. And he pretty much, I think he played with it for the rest of his career. I think at that point
Yes.
he kind of kept that on. So let's talk. It's twofold. The question: one, what did they do for him to get back so fast? And then two, and two, why should he, especially playing football, keep that protected for the rest of his career? Is it something that at that point it would have been vulnerable
Yeah.
due to age, sport, or maybe the procedure itself in order for him to get back fast?
So let me make the caveat that you have now hosed me for any of my pec tendon repair patients, because I used to think that not as many people were listening to this, but I've had multiple patients ask me, they're like, you said on your podcast that this is the way it is. So just so everybody hears, there's a disclaimer here. This is JJ Watt, a professional athlete with millions of dollars on the line and the playoffs, right? This is a different level. If he had torn it like his other Whitney Marcellus, who was also on the team,
Yep.
if he had torn it at the end of the season, they would have taken him out for the entire recovery period, right? So that's the
The
first
four to
caveat
six
I'll
months.
say here.
The 4 to 6 months.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm sure they did some crazy stuff during his surgery. I'm sure they repaired it. And I used to work with some of the guys that did a lot of the football players, and whatever they did, they might have added something additional. So if they got an acute repair, which is what they did, I mean, for Grigor, they got to him so quickly. Like, my average time to see these is 3 to 4 weeks, just because you got to wait to see the doctor and get an MRI and everything else. But if you're on the field and they tear it, they can fix it right away. You can get a really good fixation right away. But
Mm.
I bet you with him, they added something else too, right? Did they add a patch? Did they add some extra stuff in there that, not always the best case scenario, but in this case, it helps him back it up. But at the same point, if he's not, I mean, grappling is good, but if he's got this solid restraint, he's really not using his arm. He just needs to use it as like a peg,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So would I let him play? I can't say that I feel comfortable enough to let a player play at 10 weeks after a massive injury like this.
Okay,
But again, I
2018
am,
was the defensive player of the year also as they're making a
I
run. They
mean,
gave him all this money. Like, yeah, we've talked about
we don't
level.
know what the contract was though either. So the answer is that that's really impressive. We know they continue to prove it, right? We've always said like some of these players get back faster, but the part of this that's important for people to understand is that the average time for this is like a 6 month recovery, right? The average time is 6 month recovery. That is what you should expect if you're getting this surgery. He is an outstanding one. Now, I know there's been other players that have been in like the 10 to 11 week recovery, but you need to understand again that there's different constraints on the line here. So this is what's important. You got this sort of immobilization phase, 4 weeks. Then you start working on gentle motion, because remember, this muscle is so massive and so strong in many of the players and patients that we take care of. No offense, but the little old ladies are not popping their pecs,
Yeah, yeah.
right? The guy I just saw today that I need to fix his pec tear, he's 280 pounds and he moves stones, right? Like this is not something that these people are not weaklings that are carrying something. So there's massive muscles and massive strength you need here, right? They're bodybuilders, they're high level weightlifters, they're football players, they're very high intensity laborers, right? Or there are massive injuries where they hit a tree or something. So you're progressively letting this muscle sort of scar down, and then you start the motion, usually 4 to 6 weeks. Then they start moving their arm and strengthening. And really, 6 months is that sort of return to sport, 4 to 6 months. It depends on the athlete, depends on how they're doing and what they have to get back to. It
And the
also depends
sport,
on them getting
right?
their motion
Depends
back.
on the sport, right? I mean, I would think for Grigor that has to swing his arm, right? his tennis season is completely done. He won't be back in time for US Open.
Yeah.
The next time that he plays maybe is on Australia, or if not, maybe waiting to
But
Wimbledon.
let's talk about what I think might happen to him, because if he
Okay.
doesn't get a perfect repair, that whip that he does, we call that, like, that's the internal rotation where you're like belly pressing and you're
Mhm.
pushing in. That's his pec. His pec allows him to whip it around that fast. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
his rotator cuff, but really the pec is what's pulling on it, and as it
It's like a
fires,
picture.
it's like basically launching that arm forward. So the concern we have here, right, is he going to be the same in terms of his serve speed? He's probably
34
going to have
years
a lot
old.
of the
34 years old, doctor. I just want to add that as you're speaking.
No, and I think that's important. And I think, modern medicine, we've talked about this. I'm sure maybe they added an internal brace to him. Maybe they added some graft. Maybe they did all these fancy things. And the recoveries are quite good. I mean, usually we can get them relatively symmetric. We can get really good results with these. And my patients tend to do quite well with this. So it's not like it's something that's like, incredibly poor results and people don't do well. But the data shows you will lose power, right? You lose some bench press power. No matter what talk show you look at, this is not something where, like, we've looked at this return sport. It's actually on one of these papers for pec tears. And the bench press max decreased on the injured side, no matter how much we try to do.
There you go.
So again, we know this for papers. They're not perfect. It's an average. So there's always someone that's above and there's always someone that's below. So it's important to have that understanding of this. Now, again, there are young pec tears, the 25s, 30s, high level athletes like this.
Yeah.
They're a different animal than the 50 to 60-year-old pec tear.
Yeah.
So it's just, there is still a difference, and the recoveries are faster, but also some of these pec tears get really, really, really stiff, right? Because you're not moving them and you're trying to get it up. And my biggest concern is, can he get his motion back? Because that's his sort of throwing, serving shoulder. I mean, we talked about some baseball players. You stiffen up the shoulder in a baseball player, they're done.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's what I was going to ask. So, when that injury looked, I mean, he finally sat down right after he felt it the second time. So I'm not sure what the damage was. Obviously, he tore it on the first time when he felt it, and then finished it off on the second one, and then sat down, grabbed himself. I mean, I'm assuming that in that muscle area, by the chest area, by the arm area, that's extremely painful as well, right? From a cough to a move to laying on your side,
Yeah,
you know,
they hurt.
everything that's going along with it, let alone because, on the graph they were talking about, it was like 0 to 4 weeks. We're just managing and we're managing pain, and
Well,
then
and he might start earlier, right? Because I mean, there's no way JJ Watt was 0 to 4 weeks if he's that fast at 10
no,
weeks. But I mean, the good news here is it's 2022. There was a study by Garcia et al. And 90% return to sport. Now, again, they're not looking at professional tennis players because it's not that common. But here's the caveat: 74% return to pre-injury performance. So it's not 100%. And we know of players. Terrell Suggs was one of them. He just was never the same afterwards. Like,
yeah, yeah,
not everybody comes back at full motion. But again, tennis serving may be a little bit less power needed if he's got other muscles and he's that good. But we also talked about this before, that some of these professional athletes, if they lose 5%, they're still elite, right? Like if LeBron James has 3 body parts out of 4 total limbs, he'd probably still be equivalent to maybe some of the average players in the league, right? So it's a different animal.
2 questions. I've seen this scar from the injury in the past. It looked quite big. In 2025, has that shrunken down, or is it still something
Yeah,
just because of the operation? You're still dealing with that scar.
it just depends on the surgeon approach, et cetera. And obviously, as we get better, like I do a fair number of these. So my incision, this is my phone right here. It's about half the size of my iPhone. I'm sorry, you cared to see the picture,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
probably like my average size is like 5 to 6 centimeters. So it's not terribly big. We definitely move it over to make it a little more cosmetic. It kind of depends on your approach. You can't go much smaller than that, especially on a big guy, right?
yeah,
Like the good news here is this is going to be an easier approach than doing JJ Watt,
yeah,
right? Like imagine it's probably half the distance that
yeah,
you got to go to get it down there to the bone. right? Because he's not a very big guy. He's skinnier. So this is going to be a pretty straightforward situation. And it's acute. So, you get in there, it's going to basically show itself and you'll be able to fix it. I mean, it probably would take the surgeon under an hour to do that, which is good. Obviously, the surgery is not the big part, it's the recovery. But, this is a good outcome. I mean, this is, of some of the things we talked about, this is a good outcome. It's just uncommon, especially in most players. I mean, we know JJ Watt is a big deal. We know Dante Hightower. We know, Terrell Suggs, but it's overall not a common thing. Like, if you look up all the number of athletes, there's a handful. It's under 12.
Silly question. Would this be a procedure that you would possibly use kind of like that lavender effect to treat it, depending on that surgery? Or is that something we're talking about apples and oranges at this point?
So the idea behind biologics is, can you do like amniotic wraps or
Mhm.
anything else to get adhesions, right? Like, because really anything we do, we want it to heal faster. So like if I could get the tendon to heal to the muscle in 2 weeks instead of 6, then I would start moving them. And then they would, as soon as, because the challenge here is once you fix it, sometimes the patients take forever. Like some of these patients are so tight because I don't want to do a graft on them, because a graft, in my opinion, it's good, but it's not as good as the actual tendon itself.
Yeah, yeah.
I put them so tight that they're like this when they start, and then they stretch out over time, right? Some
And I
people I
thought,
put them loose enough because they're not able to do. They're fine. You don't need to stress about it too much. But the ones that are super tight, they take a while to get back. But if I knew that they would be healed, right, faster with biologics, like using some sort of putty, some sort of bone marrow aspirate or amniotic thing, we could. The problem you have too, though, is you don't want to increase the risk of infection. You start throwing on patches and everything else. You
that's a
don't
good
want to
point.
cause.
Yep.
It's different in the knee because the knee is getting flow with fluid. It's much lower risk. But and also it's the challenge here is like the outcomes aren't bad, right? Like there's not enough of them. They're kind of rare. Like even high volume surgeons, they do like 10 a year. Like I remember I saw a study, some guy had like 26. I was like, that's incredible, right? It's not that common unless you cover the CrossFit Games where they had almost over 20 of them in one event.
Wow. Wow. Well, they're moving so much weight and it's so fast. It's almost kind of like you tell people when you're working out in the gym, like slow down, take your time. You're trying not to get injured. CrossFit Games, you're just moving heavy weight and you're trying to get through it as
I'm
fast
just
as you
telling
can.
you, that surgeon was
Yeah.
very busy that day.
It's like we got another one. Jeez. Yeah, listen, we hope for the best. Obviously, as being a tennis player with that type of injury and his age is a little bit concerning. I know he's a fan favorite. I know a lot of the tennis players like him. Sinner was really disappointed. This is the fifth major in a row that he has sustained an injury that made him pull out of the tournament. For various reasons. I think it was a couple of them were leg injuries and groin and things like that. So, maybe the toll of the body with this sport is not ideal, but he's a great player. He was phenomenal, and I thought he was going to beat the number one player when I was watching him, and he had him right there until he suffered that injury. So, we wish him the best, and hopefully he'll get a chance to play and going into next year. So.
We'll see. Hopefully, speedy recovery.
All right. Any last thoughts? I know you kind of teased it a little bit that you're going to have a video coming out in about 6 weeks that's going to
Six
discuss
weeks.
these things. So we'll
Yeah,
look
check
forward
it
to.
out. We'll refer back to this episode, and hope you guys learned a little bit more about this. It's a really interesting injury. And listen, we always have this sportsdoctalk.com. We get guest requests all the time. We're getting them like, geez, like two a month now, or more. We get questions from the audience. So let us know if you have any questions about this. We're happy to answer them, and always refer to our websites. There's tons of information on this, more than you need to know. So
All right. Say goodbye, Dr. Garcia.